this climate is a very crazy climate, man.
I trust our government. Right. I trust our government officials that they won't disrespect the Constitution like that.
However,
right?
The behavior that we have seen from Donald Jamal Trump in these last 4 years, especially here at this last moment.
That's how I take. I've always considered this coronavirus similar to a STD, okay. And the fact of how
definitely okay, that's the hot take. Okay. Yo, what's up? We back. I kind of wanted to be like, the revolution will not be televised, but it will be. It is.
Right. I had no Drake lyric.
Right, sorry. Yeah, man. Hey, what's up, y'all? Thank you for joining. I am Lawrence Sanders Jr. Got the homie LaWade riding shotgun. And it's Be the People, where we are about enlightenment, engagement, and evolution, the 3 E's. If you are driving home, please be safe. Keep your hands and your eyes on the road. But if you hanging out with us, drop a comment. Let us know you're here hanging out with us. Y'all, we have, once again, such a dope show today. Like, this is... Oh, man. Like, this is... Like, y'all know, like, I'm smiling this big, bro. Like, it's going to be good, man. Like, it's going to be good. Like, and my boy LaWade, he done cleaned all the way up. Like, he went for, like, he didn't clean all the way up.
Right.
Like, yo, like, you know, it's something, man. We have a really good show. We have a special guest tonight, and it just blows my mind, man, how dope this dude is. I won't get in. I'll let LaWade do the intro because I don't want to waste any time joking or being stupid. Like, let's just get straight to it, man. Like,
we're gonna get straight to it. So this man here, right, is basically a mirror reflection of me. Same thing. Engineer. He's an electrical engineer by trade, even though I'm aerospace. And also acquired an MBA. This man here, I've met him through the National Society of Black Engineers when we were undergrad. We haven't spoken in over 16 years.
Wow.
But
how old are you, bro?
Good. 37, man. 37. But the fact of social media, staying on pack, keeping the networks intact,
yeah, man,
keeps everything, man. Never burn a bridge. Always keep your networks. This man here is the president of the Black Business School. Let me introduce you all to Mr. Lawrence Watkins.
Yo,
hey, what's going on, everyone? Man.
Yo, like, his intro made me want to be like, bum, 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 bum,
hey, y'all too much. That's too much. I was over here reminiscing about Nesby Region 3 back in 2004. Over here.
Region 3, man. He was in Kentucky. I was in Alabama, baby.
Wow, man. Well, thank you for joining us, man. Like, the intro, I feel like wasn't justice, and it's dope. Like, your resume is extensive, man. You are a brilliant mind. You are. I don't throw the word genius around too lightly, but
yeah, I don't know. I just work hard. I found something I'm passionate about, and it wakes me up every morning and gets me up to do something to try to change the world, but more specifically the Black community. So that's where my mind is day in and day out.
Tell us a little bit more about that, like, just kind of like your passion before we get into the Black Business School.
Yeah, so, when I was in college, I think I was either a junior or senior, I did a program called Leadership. And it's a program where they take you to the middle of nowhere, right outside of the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And they take you through a lot of just like leadership lessons. And one of the things that they tell you to do or ask you to do is create your own personal mission statement. And I've had a very similar personal mission statement over the last 15 or 16 years from this program that I did back in 2004, 2005-ish. And what I came up with as my personal mission statement is to become a tycoon politically, socially, and economically so that I may have a positive impact on my community. And that's something that has stuck with me, through college, through grad school, and starting, 2 or 3 different businesses along the way as well. Yeah. And, that's where I guess everything kind of started in terms of my passion. But specifically, my passion is really around the upliftment of the Black community. So since I graduated from college and turned down my corporate job offers to move to Syracuse, New York to work with my older brother, Dr. Lawrence Watkins, who was a professor of finance at Syracuse at the time, we've been working on the improvement of the economic conditions of Black people and really culturally what it means, not necessarily to be Black, but to live that Black experience and share that Black experience with the rest of the world. So I started off running a company and starting a business called Great Black Speakers Bureau. And what we were doing with that is helping organizations find African-American public speakers for their events. But eventually, we started what we're doing now about 5 years ago called the Black Business School. And at the Black Business School, we don't help you just climb the corporate ladder. We help you build your own as well. So what we do is help African-Americans to obtain a culturally relevant yet practical education in all things wealth building at an affordable price. And people come to us because they want one of three things. They either want additional freedom in their life to, spend time with their kids, or to travel or to take naps in the middle of the day, which me and boys do religiously. They want to leave a financial legacy behind to their family, their community, or they just want additional security and stability going into their golden years of retirement. So we focus on our three pillars of wealth, which are entrepreneurship, stock market investing, and also real estate investing. And we have courses and classes with those three topics in mind, as well as others like personal finance and other things as well, to help people reach their financial goals.
That's good, man. I got a quick question for you. So before we get, you kind of triggered something. We see this side of you, especially like you and your brother. We can say that you guys are successful. I mean, when we look at the standard, what success looks like, especially not just as a Black person, just period. You mentioned your Black experience, though. Can you kind of like talk about a little bit, like what was your Black experience then to now? Would you say it parallels with kind of like what's happening? Was it different? Like what was your Black experience to this point?
I think it's easier to start with now, right? Okay. So now, I mean, I feel like we're just truly free Black men. I mean, I don't know what else to say on that particular front. So, I have white friends, but I don't rely on any of my white friends or any employer, to provide for me and my family. So that's a great way to experience life, to where really all day and every day I talk to Black people. I mean, that's my job, is to talk to Black people, talk about wealth, talk about money, talk about business to Black people day in and day out. And because of that, it just shapes my worldview and gives me a sense of purpose that I probably wouldn't have had if I went down the corporate track, working for a company like GE or Bank of America or Ford or wherever, whatever job opportunities I had back in 2006 when I was graduating. I would say that before, especially in college, and before that, even in high school, I was on a different type of track, not necessarily a bad track, but a different type of track that worked well, I think, for the last generation in terms of those coming of age in the 70s and maybe in the 80s, right? And that was the track of affirmative action. So I think I was a child of affirmative action where, back in high school, I had a unique opportunity to study for 3 summers at America's most prestigious boarding school, which is Phillips Academy in Andover, Massachusetts, through a program called MS Squared, so Math and Science for Minority Students. And through that program, it opened up just a world of opportunity in terms of how big the world actually is and how there are just people out there getting it. White people, princes and all these other types of people just really getting it. And it's something that just opened my eyes in terms of what was actually possible. Yeah. But going through that program is what put me on the track to going in college. I did a program at Harvard Business School and then also did a program at Carnegie Mellon because I didn't know if I was going to go into business or politics at the time. And that provided me opportunities to get, reduced or get scholarships and reduced payments for grad school and, head to Cornell for my MBA and so on and so forth. So I was on this track of just like affirmative action. But the challenge with that track is it always puts you into a path of being or having to assimilate into a white corporate structure in some form or fashion, or a white governmental structure in some form or fashion. So at some point, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I decided to take a leap of faith instead of going down that corporate path any further after graduating from college, taking the path to actually truly build something great with me and my brother. And that's why I decided to move to Syracuse instead of like continuing down that track after college.
Good deal, man.
So basically, you are the real FUBU, right? For us bias, right?
In a certain type of way, I guess. That's something core to us. That's a core belief. Yeah. I mean, if you think about our 3 core beliefs and what we call the Black Core of 3, It is, we must educate our own children. We must create strong Black businesses, and we must support the businesses that we create. And our ethos, that's our ethos. And everything that we do kind of comes back to, those three core principles.
Right. That's good, man. I do have another question. Let's get into the Black Business School. Let's get into that, because I think that is
very paramount to this conversation.
Right. I mean, if we want to segue to it, talking about education. Pause. I just want y'all to realize my man's got Big Crit in the background. I just
yeah, man, I'm proud of this. Chris, my favorite rapper.
Listen, just in case y'all questioning this man's blackness, he's educated and loves Crit. Like,
right.
What do you
like? Yeah. I think educated folk love Crit. I think educated Black folk really love Crit anyway. So,
okay. Yeah, true story. But anyway, that was a tangent. That was the one we get for today. So the Black Business School, tell us more about it, man.
Yeah, it's something that started actually out of the experiences that both Boyce and I have had, right? Mm-hmm. So Boyce being a professor of finance at Syracuse and being really probably maybe one of two or three at most Black professors in the entire business school at Syracuse University. Being on tenure track, being a tenure track faculty. And my experience going to an Ivy League institution for my MBA and noticing the lack of Black students in those types of environments. Mm-hmm. So there were a few main problems, like at least from both our perspectives, right? So the first is, no matter how good you are as a Black person, you're not all going to be getting into Cornells, the Harvards, the Northwesterns, the Kellogg's of the world, that type of thing.
Whoa, right? You can't say that. Wait a minute. Can you say that again?
No matter how great you are, there's just not going to be enough space for everybody to be going to the elite of the elite institutions. Yes, and the amount of money that it costs to go there is just outrageous. And the value that especially if you're trying to be free and trying to go down the path of independence and entrepreneurship, not necessarily relying on corporate sponsors or relying on outside investments, from VCs and in the millions of dollars, that type of thing. It's just not going to happen, right? But that leads me to the second point, actually, is even if you do get into those types of schools where your path is somewhat determined and somewhat laid out if you want to take it to 6 figures, mid 6 figures, high 6 figure types of jobs over the course of your careers, that those jobs aren't the jobs that are going to lead to Black independence financially and economically.
I agree.
Right. I agree. So it takes, building your own economy to actually make that happen over time. Right. And because of that, because even if you get in those jobs, you're not going to own the corporation. You're not going to own the system. If you go work for Goldman Sachs or whatever, you might learn a lot of things, whatever, throughout your time, but you're ultimately not going to be the owner. You're going to be an employee. You're not going to be a producer. You're going to be an employee of the owner of those particular companies. So we wanted to change the paradigm and create a high quality yet low cost education in all things wealth building, right? And that's what we wanted to do. So the majority of the things that we do is online. We do have a hybrid type of model, though. We're moving more towards that, where eventually we'll have online portion and an offline portion. Right now it's with live events, but eventually we'll have our own building, and we'll be, having a more stable home, whether that's in, Texas, where I'll be moving very soon, from Medellin, or in Chicago, or wherever we decide to go in the future.
Where are you coming in Texas?
When?
I said where?
Oh, Houston.
Everybody here is headquartered in Dallas, so that's why they were.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So that's why they were. But yes,
Shoot on up 45, man. Come north, man.
Oh, okay. I don't know very much about Texas at all, to be honest with you.
Yeah, man.
So I'm looking forward to learning more. I think we have a little boy on the way. We have a daughter that's 2, but then our little boy, he's born next month. So we want to be closer to grandparents. So that's basically
understood. Congratulations to that. So
thank you.
All right, man. So as far as the Black Business School goes, right? Continuing on, right? I've also looked at some of the topics like investment into the stock market, how to buy and run your own successful franchise, entrepreneurship strengths, delving into out of real estate. I mean, I can go on and on. But the two that really, really stuck out to me that I really want you to talk about is the ultimate, basically homeschooling, the ultimate guide for homeschooling Black children, as well as the 15 things Black children need to know about investing. So basically taking your child, like it's easy for me or it's easy for you to say, hey, this is what I need to do. But how do I get getting my child invested into this? As you're a family man, I'm a family man, et cetera, and so forth. But how do we start that process now? Right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the education starts at home, right? And we've been investing quite a bit into our children's programs. And I would venture to say we're one of the very few organizations that combine Blackness with financial education specifically for children. There might be some other people out there doing it. I'm not going to say there's not, but we've been doing it for quite a while, and it's one of the core things that we really believe. Because if you think about movements, social movements that have happened throughout the years, right, good or bad. So you're talking about either, let's say, like the civil rights movement, which I'm reading a lot about right now, or you're talking about even someone like the Nazi movement that was happening, in Europe in the 1930s and 1940s. Most mass movements have a sense of the importance of getting children involved for the next generation, right, and getting children involved to move in a particular agenda forward. So what we want to create is a whole bunch of Black economic soldiers, Black children soldiers who, before they can even walk, they know what the difference between a stock and a bond is, or before they're even able to walk, they know what it takes to actually the definitions of different things related to entrepreneurship and investing and those types of things, because it's going to change that deep level of culture, from the ground up, for us to continue to improve economically, moving forward. Because if you look at history, a lot of times, and really, I think just with the Black social movements, economics has always been the bottleneck, right? We've always had to rely on whether it's, let's say, the Jewish community or other types of benefactors from other types of communities to fund the movements for Black folk. And we're at a point now where, the world's getting more competitive, and they might not want to do that moving forward, especially if you're getting more competition from China, who are the ultimate producers right now, right? But then B, we need to play some economic self-defense, or we need to have some economic defense over here to make sure that we have our own institutions and our own cultural values established, moving forward. So when you think about, let's say, the Black homeschooling guide that we have, and 15 things every Black child needs to know about investing. We also have one about real estate and entrepreneurship too, on that same type of pathway. We're planting those seeds now, so when it's time for them to come to fruition, they don't have to worry about a lot of things that we had to worry about in terms of economic education. They'll be heads and shoulders, not just above other Black children, but above the rest of the world, and that's what we're aiming to do.
Because they're not teaching this thing at school. Like they are teaching kids to pass tests, and I think it's amazing that you've taken this and have, like, you have a bird's eye view of, like, our kids need to know financial literacy. Like, I didn't learn financial literacy till, like, I got to college, and that was School of Hard Knocks.
Right.
I'm still learning a lot of stuff, right?
I'm still learning, yeah. I was the one who went and got the free pizza and signed up for a credit card and was, at 500 credit score by the middle of my freshman semester. Like, I didn't really know. And so I think it's really amazing that you've taken this and basically you have a whole, like, school, like, program to basically educate us on the things that we actually need to know. There's so many things that we don't know, man, and for lack of knowledge, people perish. And I think it's really amazing, like, you've taken this and that you've ran with it. That this just, I want to go. I really do. I really do. I have a quick question for you before we move to the stimulus. Do you plan on packaging this to actually present in, like, mainstream education, or is this going to be something that, okay, hey, we have the Black business schools, we have 50 campuses?
We're still deciding on what we want to do in the future. Part of us, we may create programs and products and services that diversify a little bit in terms of our customer base. But we're having so much fun educating Black folk that we eventually come back to the fact that there's really no need to diversify in that type of way, right? So I think more than anything, when we talk about diversification and what's next, it's going deeper and deeper and deeper into the education of Black folk and financially, right? So what does that look like? And it might be other things too, right? So a concept that's been, rolling around in my head is, I had a speakers bureau called Great Black Speakers before, right? And I still have it, but it's on hiatus. But what we're changing that to is Great Black University. So how do we create a massive online course to educate Black folk on all things as it relates to not just what they call liberal arts, but liberation arts. And my friend Julian Gordon always says that, right? Yeah. So we need to learn liberation arts, and part of that is economics. But then a part of that is how did social movements work? How do we get laws changed in our local communities? How do we study economics? How do we study all these different things and the systematic racism that has happened to us over many, many generations? Yes. How do we continue to dismantle those types of things? So, and that's still talking to Black people, which we both, Boyce and I both really love to do. That's our passion.
Thank God for that, man. Because talking to us be hard, man. I'm not even gonna lie to you. It's hard talking to us, man. So with that, so speaking of talking to Black people, I've been talking to a few of my friends, and this little stimulus is they've came to some kind of agreement.
Yeah, they did. I was trying to look at that before.
Well, my understanding,
$900 billion would it be, right? Which equates to $600 per person, right? If you're eligible.
Now listen, I've been grown not that long. I mean, I'm 32. But I have bills, and $600 is probably what, 2 bills? 2?
Maybe.
Maybe. Right. I mean, maybe. It ain't the big bills. It ain't the car payment. It could be a car note, but it ain't gonna be the car note and the car insurance.
Is it right? It could be a cell phone and water, Right. But what you think about that, man? Like, is that fair? What's the thinking behind it? And then also, like, what can we do to optimize receiving that money? I know some people were like, let's start a business with $600. Well, my LLC costs like 800 and some change. I don't know, maybe just because I'm in the state of Texas or what. But like, what are your thoughts on this current stimulus package?
I don't really look at things in terms of fair and unfair in life. My favorite, my favorite show of all time is The Wire, right? So
there we go, my man.
Yeah, that's my favorite show of all time. But there was in season 5 when Snoop was about to go kill Michael.
Yep.
And he was asking like, why not you gonna knock off so and so? Why y'all doing this? Why y'all doing that? That don't seem right. That don't seem fair. He don't deserve that. And then Snoop says, Mike? Basically, deserve ain't got nothing to do with it. Right. And that's something that I kind of live by, and that's how I think about just life, where I don't necessarily think about what's fair and what's not fair. It's what's going to benefit us and what's not going to benefit us, as a community, or as a family, or whatever it might be, right? And I think Black people need to really be, looking at the world. You can still look at the world in terms of fairness and unfairness, but you need to have that other type of lens too, to really think through that, right? So when I think about the stimulus check and the stimulus package, it's because we're struggling because we don't have, we haven't really invested in those opportunities that we need to move forward, whether that's your own business, whether it's your own side hustle, whether it's selling stock options. That's one of our most popular classes in the Black Business School. Whatever it is, we haven't really been doing it, and that's causing us to continue to live, check to check, right? Mm-hmm. So that's like the first piece, I guess, of the puzzle, and really thinking through that. But the second piece is I go back to entrepreneurship, right? In terms of and really, there's a connection here. Us getting these $600 stimulus checks as American citizens, that type of thing, that's not going to go, very far. It's in many ways the same challenges that I see when I see a lot of my friends, who I'm very happy for, getting these grants from organizations like Google or whatever it is that's out there, right? Mm-hmm. That's like giving these, $10,000 business grants and, wanting to support Black business that type of way, which I think is an excellent thing to do. Don't get me wrong. Right. But the challenge is the companies that are giving these $10,000 grants, they weren't getting those grants. What they were learning how to do was focus on how to create a customer and how to get customers. Right. So the best thing that these organizations can do, or that you can do as a person, is learn how, in terms of increasing your independence is learning how to create a customer for yourself.
Mm.
So if you're employed, you're basically an entrepreneur with one customer. That's basically what it comes down to right now. And you get some additional benefits along with it, but you have one customer. And we need to learn how to start diversifying our customer base and diversifying our asset base so that when things like a pandemic do happen, we're not like SOL when it comes to, our economic, viability and our economic future. So, that's kind of what I think about the stimulus. So I don't think about things in terms of deserve or not deserve, but it's what do we need to do next? And what we need to do next is really, pull our resources together and support our own communities economically and create our own economy, because that's what other people are doing. They're creating their own economies, right?
Right.
In other groups, like, I always go back, to Jewish individuals that I highly respect in terms of being able to do that.
They do it, man.
We need to start doing that a lot more. And I think that we can. I think that we will. And I think things have already started to change on that particular front.
And so I want to ask you, you really feel like we can do it? Like, honest, like, and it's not that, because I don't feel like we do not have the resources. I feel like we've always, well, not always, we have access to resources. I feel like we have the knowledge. But in your honest opinion, do you really feel like this is something that will happen?
I think a lot of people would do it. Like, that's another thing that I've learned with movements. Most people are going to stick with the status quo, right? So whatever that status quo is, the status quo right now might be, all right, I'm going to get a good, quote unquote, good education. I'm going to send my kid to, the white school if I possibly can. I hope they go off to college, and I hope that they go get a good job, right? So most people are going to go down that path, or they're going to go into the military, where the military will pay for their education and get good, VA loans when they come out, that type of thing. Right. So it's going to be one of those paths that they're going to go on. What we're doing is trying to create a new path for, Black folk who want to go down it, right? So I'm not aiming to get everybody on board, but we've educated over 100,000 students in the Black Business School so far. Right. And many have applied all these principles to their families. And, a generation from now, their family's really going to thank them. I mean, that's going to be at the high level. Right. But, 2 or 3 years from now on the low end, a year from now, they're going to thank, thank God I did what I did to prepare my family for the future. Right. So, no, not everybody's going to do it, but we don't need everybody right now. We just need enough people to follow this path to make it easier for the next generation.
So to the psychosis of that, right? So I understand that you say you don't need everybody. And I know this is, let's call it the third path, right? How do you get, with the psychosis of everything going on, where people talk about everything that happened in Tulsa, everything that happened in Tuskegee, everything that happened, all these, let's call them excuses for lack of a better term, right? How do you get people to say, all right, well, just get uncomfortable and come down this third path? Because it seems like we're stuck in path one, right? With, get a good job, parents retired, go to school, all that good stuff, military, all that goodness, right? Or let's say this untrodden path, that not even your third path, this untrodden path of just sitting there and just wallowing in my own like self-pity, right? So how do we get people to that third path that you were discussing?
I mean, people know that they need to do something different, right? Like they understand the level of unhappiness or the level of fear or the level of anger or the level of shame, the level of embarrassment that they feel day in and day out, having to go clock into a job that they hate, working for somebody they hate even more. Right. Like they understand that. They deeply understand that. Right. And, I guess the thing is there needs to be a level of belief that the third path or this other path is actually viable for them and their family. Right. So I think more than anything is, taking those early adopters, making sure that we have success stories out of those early adopters in terms of, their lives, and share those success stories with as many people as possible, and let them know that, yes, this third path is viable. This third path does exist. And if you just have a little bit of courage, because that's what's lacking a lot of times, courage, right? It takes courage to get over your fear of the unknown, to do something that no one has ever done before. Or that in this case, people have done it before throughout history. It's just not many compared to the broader society, in the broader Black community. So it's just really, getting over that fear. And then in addition to that, from our end as a Black Business School, how do we continuously, shorten the path to results, but then B, how do we position our students I guess, in a way where if they do fail in some form or fashion as it relates to this wealth building journey, they can ease their fall a little bit easier versus just kind of being out there and not knowing, what to do, and they lose everything, and then they will never ever try again after that because of the pain and the hurt that they experienced the first time when they try to start their business.
I've heard that before. Matter of fact, even in talking to my father, he was like, who is, I would say he's successful, but he was just like, when we fall, the ground is a little harder for us, and it's more difficult for us to come back. And so the fact that you guys, this is amazing, man. Like this is I love this, man. You mentioned something about like generational wealth, the establishment of generational wealth. How do we do that? Like what is your take, and like how do we do that at this point?
Man, do I have my document over here? Julian's cash flow framework. It's one of my favorite things. I'm not gonna be able to find it this quickly. But this is a deep question. This is one of the questions.
Could be another episode if you want to come back.
Yeah, this is one of the questions I think about wealth and generational wealth. The first thing, the question, and the assumption is that we're talking about financial wealth, right? And I think we need to start questioning that assumption to begin with. Before I even answer the question, what does it take to establish generational wealth? The first question is, what does it mean to be wealthy? Yeah. Right? What does it mean to be wealthy? What does it mean for you to have a wealthy life? And one of my favorite books is called The Geometry of Wealth. It's I can't remember the author's name off the top of my head, but it's kind of strategic and psychological and visionary in many types of ways. But he talks about wealth as being defined as funded contentment for your life. Wow, so that's all being wealthy is funded contentment. And contentment, different than happiness, where it's that deeper level of happiness. So like, me raising my daughter is joy, is contentful. You know what I mean? That's like contentment. Me going to a party, getting drunk, even though I don't drink, but let's say I did drink, or, me eating my Snickers bar and my cookies, that I love so much. That brings me happiness, but not necessarily contentment right. For my life. Right. But the wealth piece is funding that contentment. So how do you fund if my daughter wanted to be a school teacher or volunteer for her life? How do I fund her lifestyle where she can do what makes her happy and do what makes her joyful and contentful, instead of having to worry about money and worrying about putting food on the table, right? So that's generational wealth to me. Is putting my children and my grandchildren and other generations into a position to where they don't really have to think about money to fulfill their life purpose, first and foremost. So I think about that first. But now let's go more tactically in terms of what that actually looks like. Piece of it to begin with is, all right, how do we create those assets or invest in those assets that provide that, first and foremost for us? You know what I mean? So that could be through savings, that could be through insurance, because there's a guy named Robert Cialdini. Daniel Kahneman. This is Daniel Kahneman's work. He came up with a theory called prospect theory. He has a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. But he's a consumer behavior psychologist, so he thinks about that type of thing, that type of stuff. And he has a theory called prospect theory. And all it says is people value losses more than they value gains, probably by a 2-to-1 margin. So if I told you I'm going to take away $2 from you, it's equivalent to me saying I'm going to give you $1. Right. So if you know that from a psychological standpoint, as Black folk, we need to think about, all right, how do we protect what we already have? Right. So that might be through health insurance, life insurance, those types of things, savings, because, us losing what we already have is a bigger detriment psychologically than actually gaining generational wealth, because that's what it really comes down to, because money is only a psychological tool, but that's a whole nother conversation. Right. Wow. Yeah. Money doesn't exist. I mean, it's just a psychological concept. Psychological construct. Right. So if we know this, it's all a psychological game. So if that's the case, and hope I'm not getting too philosophical where everybody here tonight. But so how do we understand prospect theory to protect our downside risk? But then once those downside risks are protected, how do we continue to gain in terms of asset building for the future, to try to get as much upside as possible, so that our kids and our grandkids and our great grandkids can benefit from the work that we're doing in 2020. And that comes through starting your own business, right? You know, because you can't pass on your job to your kids, right, or your grandkids. Right. Investing in real estate, investing in land, because they're never going to make any more land, and then investing in stocks, which is really just investing in businesses. But the stock market has generated, you know, some of the highest rates of return, you know, throughout the centuries, and it's you know, completely passive, where you don't have to do anything for your money to grow. So that's how I would think about, you know, my game plan and my strategy behind generational wealth.
Awesome, man. Lovely answer. Let me ask you this question, right? Let me think. Let me talk on behalf of those that are not so philosophical, so to say, right?
Yeah.
And they have fixed expenses, right? So you have the rent, the mortgage, the car note, the phone bill, the cell, you know, the groceries, even though that could be a variable expense. Let's just call it a fixed expense, right?
Child
you have
support.
Child support. Some may have child support, so alimony, all these fixed expenses, right? And I get, even if I get the stimulus package, even if I don't, how do I? But I wake up one morning and I want to start generational wealth. How would I go about that?
Well, there's always something you can cut, right? And it might take. I mean, the hard cold truth is that the less money that you have, the more sacrifices you're going to have to make more money, to make more of it, right? I mean,
that's a bar there.
Yeah. So it's gonna, it's gonna take sacrifice. It's gonna take sacrifice to make it happen. So, what are you willing to sacrifice for your family's future? You know, what are you willing to sacrifice for your great grandkids that don't exist yet? Wow. You know, what are you willing to sacrifice for your picture to be on their wall, right? And them telling stories about you back in 2020 during the pandemic. You know, my great grandfather, you know, cut his expenses, and you know, he made the most out of it, $600 stimulus check. What are you willing to sacrifice to create that legacy for you, that level of freedom for you and your family, right? So that'd be the first question that I have, right? But I do understand that there's just structural things that happen to where it's just harder for some folk and not as, you know, hard for others. I had an easy life, relatively speaking. You know, I came from two, you know, middle class parents, right? Or I grew up in a middle class, you know, household. My dad was a high-ranking police official in the city of Louisville, and you know, I was protected in many types of ways, right? And I do understand that. So, but like I said, deserve ain't got nothing to do with it. I mean, you know, there were people, you know, more privileged than I was in many different types of ways. So I'm not trying to lecture anybody, but I'm just trying to tell you what I know. So the first thing is, what are you willing to sacrifice, you know, from a psychological standpoint? So first is cutting those expenses down where you can cut them. You know, second is, you know, getting a base level of savings in place, where, you know, if something really went wrong, right, you could survive for 3 to 6 months. So that's the second piece. Yeah. And then the third piece is, you know, how are you going to use your time, you know, turn off Netflix, because time is also an asset. You know, your best asset is your brain anyway. So your biggest asset is your brain. So how are you going to use your brain? How are you going to use your time to, you know, turn nothing to something? Yeah. Whether it's through entrepreneurship, that's probably the easiest way, or entrepreneurship or real estate will probably be the best ways to do so. In terms of, if you have only $1,000 or $100 or $500, you probably have to start with entrepreneurship and creating some type of side hustle. And then once you get more passive income, or get, you know, more income from those other types of things, investing in those more passive streams like real estate and stocks over time. So that would be, you know, my advice to someone who's in you know, in that situation.
And like somebody told me too, before we take it home, somebody told me that Steve Harvey, Ryan Seacrest had 7 different streams of income. So if they can do it, why aren't you doing it? Right. So, man, that's, I mean, real words, man. I appreciate it.
Something that sticks out to me, man, and like the common theme as we wrap up, man. The common thing that I hear, though, it sounds like there has to be a change in mindset before any of this can happen, and because it's there. But it sounds like to me what you're saying is that before we can build generational wealth, before we can change anything financially, like, we first have to change our mind. And I think that's the hardest. That's the hardest thing to do, because you mentioned the systematic racism, all the things that's happened before, and you know, whether it be rumor, whether it be factual, just changing our mind to actually getting up, being, frugal or making the sacrifice to be successful or reading a book. It's just changing the mind, man. That's what I'm getting from a lot of this, is that you're saying that we gotta change our mind.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you. I mean, there are immigrants that come to the country for generations that came with nothing, and in a generation or two, have something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Korean community is a perfect example because of their symbiotic relationship with the Black community in many types of ways, right? Right. In terms of,
man, absolutely.
They went through the Korean War where a large portion of their country was destroyed, and the people that they loved most dearly were killed and burned, and so many different things happened to them. But they came over to the United States, sacrificed, for generations, and now they own the Black hair care market that they didn't come in and steal. We kind of gave it away. We didn't claim it as ours, right? And we didn't come back and start claiming all this stuff is ours, as the Black community. Yeah. But other people immigrants have come to this country and have done it over and over and over again. Now, there are certain things that they didn't have, like living with their oppressors, that we have.
They had freedom to come over here.
Yeah, the mental baggage that comes with still living in America, where this is where our ancestors were enslaved people. We do have that to struggle with, but in many ways, we have to not necessarily let it go, but not let that drive us, moving forward, because our great grandchildren are depending on us right now to make the right decisions. Yeah. Right. They ain't caring, in terms of, what happened to us. I mean, they care, but they're not caring about that. They're like, is granddaddy going to put food on our table? Right. You have to think in that type of way. You have to think in 100-year plans, like, the Chinese government does. Right. What's going to happen 100 years from now? What do we envision for the Black community in the year 2120? Because we're already there. We're making decisions that's going to affect them. Right. Yeah, but, are we going to be making the right decisions? And we need to have that type of mindset, moving forward.
Give us your final thought, man. What you got?
Take us home, man. Leave people something.
I mean, I say a final thought, man. You've been dropping all kind of nuggets and stuff, bro. Like, what's the final thought? Like, just give us a thought that we can leave with. That's
give people something to take home.
Yeah,
keep home with.
This is the go box. You're putting it in the box to go.
Yeah. I would think I'm doing a lot of reading right now. The book I'm reading right now is Parting the Waters. It's about the early civil rights movement. And I'm reading a lot about a lot of different Black movements right now. But just the book I'm reading right now, it's a very big book on the civil rights movement. And the key lesson I'm taking from that is currently in 2020, we're making Black history. We don't know it yet, and we don't know what's going to come of it yet, but that's what we're doing. And if you look at previous movements from the past, many of those movements were led by people just like you and I. Yeah. They were led by just regular, ordinary people who were tremendously flawed, right? And this is not like a positive Black history story, but
we'll take it.
It's funny in many ways, but it proves this point. So there's this really famous photo back from 1958 of two police officers arresting Martin Luther King. And at this time, MLK, Dr. Martin Luther King, was a 29-year-old young man in Montgomery, Alabama. And we're about 2 to 3 years removed from the Montgomery bus boycott, which made him world famous. But the momentum from that boycott had slowed down. And he didn't know what was really coming next. He had been trying, voter registration campaigns and other types of things, but nothing was really, working for him. So that picture was taken, which revived a lot of what was going on in terms of the fire behind Black folk. But the story behind that picture, he wasn't marching or anything. He was in the courtroom where that picture was taken, him being arrested by happenstance. And what was happening is in another courtroom, he was there for moral support for his friend, Reverend Ralph D. Abernathy, who another guy tried to kill him because basically Ralph Abernathy was accused of having an affair with that other man's wife. So the other man, his name was Edward Davis, he was chasing Abernathy out of his church with a hatchet for blocks down the road.
Wow,
because of this affair where Ralph Abernathy was having for many, many years. Right. So Abernathy didn't want to press charges. Thankfully, there were two police officers in that case that saved Abernathy's life from this, this angry Black man, whose wife you've been sleeping with, right? So he was there for the trial of Edward Davis and trying to peek in to see what was going on. And then that's when the racist cops were just being racist in that particular instance, carried him out. And that renewed a movement that had been kind of at a stalemate or like, just kind of there.
Yeah.
Not really moving at that particular moment in time. Yeah. So I say all that to say is we have this mythology of our leaders, of our Black leaders throughout history. And it's not till you really start understanding and diving deeper down to that history that you realize to the fundamental core that they were just people just like you and I. They were just people just like you and I. Some of them may have more connections. Some of them didn't have more connections, right? Or they may have more education or some skill set that you don't have, but you have your own unique skill sets. So no matter who you are, you can make Black history right now. It might not be world changing like a Martin Luther King or Ralph Abernathy, but you can at least change your family's history. Yeah, you can at least change that moving forward. And that's what I want to leave with you today is in 2020 today, you're making Black history, and don't think that you don't have enough to do it because there have been people way more flawed than you who have changed the world way more.
Golly.
Wow.
Yo, this is probably like the best show.
You're too kind.
And we just use this as our advertisement. I don't want people to be mad when you're not here every week, but it's okay.
They're gonna be tuning in just like, so where's that other guy go?
Right. Yeah, but I mean, please, y'all, if y'all want more content like this, again, please like, subscribe, turn on that bell notifications. If you've been hanging out with us, please leave some comments. Let us know what you thought about the show. Thank you so much, Mr. Watkins. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I really, really, really do, man. LaWade, thank you, man. To all the TFG Media family, Shahana back at the helm. Thank y'all. Y'all be safe out there. We love y'all. Until next time. Peace.
Before we go, the blackbusinessschool.com.
Yes, blackbusinessschool.com. Yep. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.